They're vulnerable, homeless, okay, so they can be pressured into any kinds of arrangements, but also even just kidnapped. They're on the street, they could be kidnapped. People oftentimes kidnap them, people sometimes just outright slaughter them. They kill them. They see them in their tents and they rape them. It's the sort of thing that evil Satanists do, fascists do. It's real. The stats are out there. They're real. So fascism, the party of prostitution, look, they've always taken advantage of the fact that, look, they have a tribal ruling structure, and then they can also use nature as it exists within the parameters that they've hemmed it in order to, like I said, create a killing ground and an exploitation field of their design. And they're making the party of prostitution, okay, the valley of death. Now we talk about idle whores, sacred cows. I talk about this dilemma within the context of fascism and fascist rule, okay? Now, you know, that is a dilemma that it is created by their rule, wherein it's like the banana tree versus marriage thing. Look, you could either be a wife under their fascist pressure, their patriarchy, okay? And you will get with that program. Look, if you got to wear a headscarf, if you got to wear, you know, you got to cover your face, if you got to this or that or whatever. Look, you've got a mandate of something like 3 blowjobs a day or whatever it takes for them to be satisfied that you're living up to your wifely duties and everything else. You're going to do that, and you're going to be a good wife and make sure that dinner's on the table. It better be warm too, or else backhand time. Okay, you can be a wife, or you could banana tree that shit and you'll be a prostitute. Seems like an extreme. I mean, if you're happy with either of those, well, then you might not be entirely out of luck. But that's pretty much the range of your decision making in the fascist patriarchy. And oftentimes it's not your choice at all. So don't start to thinking that you're doing all right for yourself. Some women are better treated than others. In some instances it might be okay. But look, it's nothing to feel good about. It's nothing to feel secure about. So idle whores, sacred cows. Now, fascist feminists in this day and age, not the real ones, the fascist infiltrators to the feminist movement, feminists looking for equality and equity gains where they were inherently at a disadvantage to get them up to the level of equality, right? They know they're disadvantaged in a field. Now we have to consider equity and bolstering their value add equity to bring them up to equality. We have to consider them at the level of equity to see where they lack so that we can pump them up so that they can get to equal. That's how the game was played, but the fascist feminists didn't want that. They weren't feminists, they were Nazis, and they were trying to spoil that game, which is law. That's the law game. Ohm, okay? Something like the Ohm symbol, life for life's sake, peace and all this good stuff, all that. Not the Nazi symbol, the fucking swastika and all this, which is exploitation, abuse, slavery, all that. See my other videos, we talk about it to some degree more. Using a camcorder, that's why this one's a little different than last videos. I got really bad natural lighting happening here. But in the idle whores game, you know, again, look, this is like, they want to make you believe, like the fascist feminists, like, let's liberate sex work, rights for pimps and sex. Well, you know, that's not getting anyone. You think that liberating prostitution is going to liberate women and going to liberate men? That's what prostitution is, endemic and pandemic under fascism and tribal Satanism, because women are exploited and abused no matter what. Yeah, you're going to have your cheerleaders over here, the women who are telling you, oh, it's so great, prostitution's so great. Well, yeah, you know what? Talk to every prostitute that's ever lived 10 years into their career and ask them how their ass is doing after all that time. And how much they love their job. And whether or not they think that that was the best career move, or that's how they should have gone about things at the end of the day. Whether or not they would have maybe preferred doing something else with life. Okay? I'm trying to find some lighting here. I don't have a lot going for me. Okay. I don't know. What am I doing here? Am I in view? Or I don't know. I'm still working. I have a lighting kit coming in, so that should help in the future. Okay. So idle whores, look, we want to avoid idle whores and sacred cows. This creation of something like, this idealized version of something like a utopia where it's really only a nightmare. Where you're accepting something like some crazy narrative about like the inherent value and worth of something that ultimately amounts to slavery. Right? This idol worship of things that are clearly not so good as that, as they would have you believe it's so great, it isn't. Again, like sacred cow, it's like, this idol. Imagine in India, do you think cows are doing so great when it's like when you get into their clutches, you're forced into slavery. They set you loose and look, you're not doing so well, are you? You're an emaciated cow walking and roaming the streets. Oh, the cows are so sacred. Well, someone not taken care of is not exactly doing so well for themselves, even if you just cut them loose. Though, ever see those cows? Do they look like they're having a great time? Yeah, they're being set loose and allowed to roam and whatever else. Are they looking okay? They're so emaciated. They're not being fed properly. They're not doing all right. This idea of like, oh, well, you can be free by being incorporated into the fascist structure. Well, free how? By being a temple prostitute? Are you free yet? Have you ever heard about sacred sexuality? Does it sound like particularly sacred to have your intimate relations with your woman and all the spiritual sort of experiences that are supposed to come along with that be coupled with some fucking old guy looking over your shoulder, grabbing your hips and making sure you pump properly? Does that sound like a good idea? Does that sound sacred to you? Because that's how they do shit. Okay? So, idle whores, sacred cows, okay? You want to avoid that. What's missing in both of those? Well, your actual rights. Your actual rights, right? The ideal that you would hope to achieve. The outcomes that are actually good at in a state and under conditions wherein you actually have your rights. Where you actually, do get to make a free choice that actually benefits you and gets you out of the condition of domineering slavery, oppression, and abuse that they would fashion for you. That's what freedom's about, and that's what the law's about, and that's what rights are about, and that's what we're trying to do. And that every rights fighter, freedom fighter, is arguing for reason, logic, sanity at law so that we actually have control of our lives and our rights, our freedoms, so that we can get outcomes that empower us and liberate us and allow us to live the life of our design and our choosing, out of the grips from the tyrannies that have been long established in evidence. There's no doubt about what they are and how they work. We have long accounts in history of how these things worked throughout time and cultures, across cultures, and we don't want it. We don't want fucking genital mutilation. We don't want fucking prostitution. We don't want foot binding and fucking girdling. We don't want fucking, dick severance. We don't want fucking slavery effective or de jure or de facto or whatever. We don't want it. We're not going to accept it. We're going to fight against it. And that means, creating solutions to something like a requirement for, first and foremost, before anything else, fucking shelter. We don't want to have to engage in a sexual or intimate relationship with someone because we need a fucking roof over our head and we need 3 square in a day. And we shouldn't be thrown in jail either as the only way to get that done either. And I'm not saying that that's not an answer. If you're dying on the street, maybe you should put a fucking brick through a municipal government window. Maybe you should burn a fucking guy's house down if that's... Because you gotta get that ticket to jail somehow, or else you're gonna starve and die on the street. They got a cot indoors if you start committing crimes, don't they? I'm not saying it's a bad answer. It might be your only answer. I'd say, look, you're going to go that way. Make sure you make it fucking worthwhile. Do something for the cause on the way down also. That's what I would say. Make sure you make a point of it. Anyway, like I'm saying here, okay, idle whores, sacred cows do not give us any kind of choice, and they do not allow us liberation. They just put us in one form of bondage or another, either through tight controls and accepting the options that they offer, like, you know, an idle whore's banana tree versus forced marriage, essentially, or extorted. Either of those. Or sacred cows. Oh, well, then if you don't want to do what we want, then I guess we'll just cut you loose and submit you back to anarchy, submit you back to a state of nature. That isn't nature. You're not submitted to a state of nature when you're let loose in the city streets. You can't build a fucking hut and then start to make better for yourself as you would be in nature. They knock this shit down. They won't let you keep your hut. They fucking knock it down every time. Can't start gathering. You can't. Where's the bush where you're going to start gathering? What can you start shooting? Whose pets can you start hunting? They hemmed you in. There is no state of nature. There is no rugged individualism. Go ahead and try and practice it, and they will burn your shit down. Because this state has got it cordoned off. Everything's fucking zoned. It's zoned. There's no nature. It's not fucking nature. It's dominion. And dominion comes with responsibilities for the state at law. To the people, and they're ignoring it so that they can continue to exploit and abuse you. See my videos on tribal Satanism. It's a fucking killing field. They created a valley of death, and in that valley, they capture and abuse and molest and rape slaves, would-be slaves. You're not even like animals out there in the wild, out on your own, you can defend yourself. You're more like an animal in a fucking trap. They got your leg in a fucking bear trap. They pick you off at will. The valley of death. You don't have to fear any evil, but it's out there stalking you. So, okay, the party of prostitution. You know, the same thing happens just with labor. Again, like I said, you're not arguing with your boss for mistreatment or for better because he's mistreating you or for better wages. You're not unionizing this and that. You're afraid to lose your fucking job. You don't want to end up on the street like the sacrifices they're parading around in front of you every day that are used to intimidate and make you afraid. They're like people hanging on a pike out there or off a fucking tree. Heads on a stick. And everyone's supposed to go, oh, don't say anything, don't say anything. You're going to end up like that guy. You're going to end up like that chick. So it's war. It's a war on its own people. It's the internal violence against the people of this land that's occurring. They war externally, they war internally against us. And we should not support them. And we should not fucking make political arguments defending them. Or that, in any way uphold their efforts to devastate these people. Okay? I'll end that right now. So a quick initial treatment. Look, we want to have rights. So my rights say I don't want to live as a slave. I don't want to live as a forced wife. I don't want to live as a prostitute. Therefore, what do I want? I don't want to live with a man. Maybe I want my own apartment. And that should be the standard for all patriots, all people of the land that are raised in this country, in that we had an education, we didn't do the things we wanted to make money and store, and whatever we would do, scrambling about in the wild to do better for ourselves. We all went to school, we all went with their program. That means whether they select us or not, there's limited employment. They never aspire to full employment. That means people are going to be left out. Everyone who doesn't get the better life that they might hope to build as a result of being rewarded for their selection and their dutiful service after being selected should have the minimal standard of a unit, one apartment, probably a 2-bedroom, even as a single guy. So you have an office or whatever else, work out in there aside from, the area where you eat and sit and lounge around. Right? A 2-bedroom, something like that per person. As a minimum standard, where they can achieve what? Security. Security from those who would use the fact that they need somewhere to live to exploit and extort them in some way, or to submit them to slavery in some way, or some form of forced intimacy in some way. We need to secure that space for the individual so that they can have rights at law. So you can guard their own fucking life and their rights and their fucking freedoms. Without that, as long as they got to depend on living with someone else in order to survive, we have a slave state. It's a slave state as it ever was understood. It's a party of prostitution that makes that possible. So the new Democrats don't even talk about it. The neo-libs never, obviously, ever fucking do. The conservatives never do. They're not trying to expropriate properties from the rich or buildings from the rich in order to get those apartments out to people who are in need, to let the government fucking run it, just to get the people who are homeless off the fucking street. Do like a tier of reintegration and, assimilation to some degree. More integration than assimilation. If they're on drugs, have a ward, something like a ward. It's not really like a hospital ward, but it's a community-based service attached to a living arrangement wherein it's understood they're very low functioning and dysfunctional. They're not really appropriate to live with a general population that's trying to get on and recover in other ways and or live a normal life. They're probably you might not even be able to allow them to have their own fucking kitchen. Maybe they just have rooms and stuff and there's a community service that cooks for them and stuff. You can't even trust them with a fucking burner. They burn the house down. Whatever it is, get it done. Fucking create the tier of community service as related to housing necessary to take care of these people. And then as they get better, get them into the housing they need. Don't fucking rent it to them. Sell it. Give it to them. Make it so that whatever is paid for that, it never exceeds the amount that community services or welfare pays for shelter. So 500's max that they give out for shelter, that means there's nothing that you could ask of them that exceeds 500 for living in those situations. Right? That's the game they play right now. They give you so much for shelter, but every landlord in fucking the city asks for more. So how is it actually shelter? It isn't. It doesn't actually secure the resource, so it doesn't protect the life. What good is it? What good is it? What good is it? It's no good. It's fucking useless. It's a political ploy. The government's saying it did its job, but it didn't. It's not regulating the housing market. It's not hemming in landlords. It's not saying, hey, look, if you want to fuck every person who owns a building has to put so many units aside to help house the poor. They don't do that shit. There's got to be limits on how much you could ask of these people. They don't fucking do that. They just say, oh, well, we give them shelter, this shelter expense and this and that, but they don't account. They don't try to act to see if it actually fucking achieves the resource. So, what we got to do is have regulation and effective provision. So that actually secures the resource. The fact, everybody knows this. The government has allowed it to go on like it has, killing people, making them homeless for decades. And it's a crime. It's a state fucking crime. It's Holocaust. So, actually having rights and this and that, what it does is it achieves the law and the right and the security required to keep life. That's what we need. Okay? What I got here, can you even see what's going on? Probably not. Shitty I can't get anything done with this fucking camera. Anyway, whatever. Lighting kit coming, then I won't be dancing around with the light here. Okay? So real rights isn't idle whores, it isn't sacred cows, it isn't banana tree versus forced marriage. It's them understanding that you have rights, that they've got to secure your life. You got to be liberated from would-be captors, enslavers, exploiters, abusers, rapists. That's the state. It doesn't play into the demands and requirements of fascists and patriarchs that are trying to fucking kidnap you and rape you and force you to fucking do this or that, in a desperate gambit to keep a roof over your head or fucking food in your stomach. Okay? The red pill dudes are all about that. They're just biting at the bit. They cannot fucking wait for women to fall on their face even harder than now so that they end up, and they never argue about the condition of the economy. You'll never see them complain about, oh, there's no housing available. Oh, life is unaffordable. Oh, the state doesn't provide effective supports. They never ever fucking do that. They only go, oh, look at these evil bitches. Oh, look, they're going to get what they deserve. And I'm sure that a lot of those women are evil. But that's not all women. And that does not constitute the question at law as it pertains to all women. Putting out the worst examples of them so you can say, oh, see, look, they deserve it once they start getting rounded up. Once they start dying on the street, or we start rounding them up to force them back in the kitchen and start taking the fucking backhand again. Right? Oh, the MCU, we hate the MCU. Well, I got news flash for you, pal. Oh, we don't like representation in the Marvel Universe. I got news for you, buddy. The Marvel was always like that in the comics. The Marvel you're talking about, this Aryan fucking fantasy where everything's Chris Hemsworth fucking lubed up and spritzed down and fucking shined up for your fucking Aryan, gay boner having ass. In love with the fucking male, Aryan Uberman and everyone else can go pound sand. That's an illusion. You're creating that. Marvel was never that. It always represented different races and women and men and swapped out characters, gender and sex and race. And they did it all the time. They're not doing anything off brand. What you're asking of them, this anti-woke agenda, is off brand. Why should they listen to you? You don't even like Marvel. You don't even like them. I don't like them these days, but that's because they keep hiring fucking monsters to act in their movies. Megan Thee Stallion, Dana White. They're both monsters. Megan Thee Stallion is a satanic fucking prostitute that's trying to basically push that evil agenda, tribal Satanist agenda. Dana White is a monster that puts people into a meat grinder and now is doing something akin to like fucking paid red room torture with his slap competitions. Knowingly giving people fucking brain damage. They got no choice but to get brain damage. That's the whole game. They can't slip, they can't defend, they can't fight, they can't dodge, they can't block, they can't do shit. They gotta sit there and take brain damage from a guy who weighs 340 fucking pounds, teeing off on him on steroids, fucking putting that to his brain. A hand as hard as he could fucking throw it. Over and over again. Unforgivable. Dana White should be thrown in jail. He's a fucking monster, not given a spotlight in a movie about heroes. At least in the Venom movie, they call him a monster because he is. He is. So anyway, look. The answer is rights, where we get our life back and we get it protected and we have free choice and we get to be liberated from the monsters who would capture and enslave, abuse us, and kill us. That's what it is to have the freedom fight, the right war. It isn't taking some one or other or many of their pre-baked solutions that lead us only into slavery and into more abuses and violence. We don't need someone arguing for prostitution Because it's the fall of civilization. Okay? I can't get this to focus up. I'm using a camcorder right now. It's the fall of civilization. Prostitution. We don't need people arguing. We don't need people arguing for prostitution. Prostitution is the fall of civilization. It's a form of slavery. Now I'll do another video on prostitution and why it's inherently unlawful, even without the context of slavery. How in an economic view of basic transactions, prostitution is unlawful. How it discounts at least one party's personhood and contribution to the point of, making them, not considering them equally or as a person in the transaction. Could be either the prostitute or the John. It doesn't matter which. And depending on the situation, it's one or the other or both. And, that's not to mention the extortionary nature of, or the extortionist nature of the field when we look at tribal Satanism and fascism, which is always the problem. So, we don't allow it because it lets all hell loose. And we don't need somebody arguing for something like the slap competition as a way for people to make money in a hard economy, or because you think they might be passionate about it. It does not fucking matter. Anyway, so fascism, tribal Satanists as a party of prostitution and slavery, idol whores, sacred cows, okay, versus real rights, real life fight for liberty and freedom, and securing our escape and our remedy and our solution, as opposed to being cattle herded into another pen fit for our own destruction, built for our own destruction. Okay? That's what we're talking about here. So, I gotta go do some things. Just thought I'd bring that up.